The two biggest fears that people had in our organisation is one, it's going to replace learning, and two, it's going to replace jobs. It made very clear where I stood as the leader on an AI, which was enhancement, not replacement. And to this day, that's still my benchmark.
One of the things that really strikes me is who the AI is helping. Is this technology going to help a student who knows a lot about AI already? And what about the students who don't?
The idea is to make every person a superhuman, effectively in their work, in their education.
What does a highly literate student look like in this environment, and how do we teach them to maintain their unique human voice and identify where they're using AI?
I don't think my answer is going to be the one you would expect necessarily.
We're joined by some amazing people this afternoon, and I'm really excited to introduce them. We've got Bryony. Bryony is at Coleg Sergar and leads the college's award-winning digital learning and AI integration strategies, and she's the driving force behind their UK gold status AI professional learning programme, and a leading voice in empowering educators and safely reshaping further education and higher education. And I've known Bryony for a while now, and we were talking about this topic when I think very few people knew it even existed. So it's amazing to see the work she's doing at Coleg Sergar and the other colleges there. We've also got Amar. Amar is country manager, UKI and MEA at Superhuman. Now, many of you will know Superhuman by its earlier name of Grammarly, but of course is now Superhuman. And Amar leads AI-driven communication and productivity initiatives. He's an expert in digital workspace optimization and helps institutions use AI to elevate student literacy and accelerate digital transformations. So Bryony, Amar, amazing to be joined by you this afternoon. Let's jump into conversation number one that I'm excited to get to, which is moving beyond the deficit mindset. Bryony, I'm going to come to you first. And
seems good.
What I want to get into is that first of all, amazing work at Coleg Sergar, securing the UK gold status recognition. And you did that precisely because you didn't run away from this technology, which we're seeing some people still doing that, some organizations still doing that. How did you successfully guide your faculty away from a defensive policing mindset? And how has that cultural shift directly impacted student confidence, do you think?
I love this question. And the reason why I love this question is because I get to say this. Right at the beginning, we got it completely wrong. Totally and utterly wrong. And Dan, you were one of my very first early conversations, and you came in and you spoke to some of our leaders.
And you were with Bryony. You're not putting
that was before we got it wrong.
Right? This is you're not putting the blame on me for getting it wrong right at the start.
No, you came in after we got it wrong.
Okay.
No, essentially, we just turned into magpies. As soon as ChatGPT kind of hit the educational headlines, we just absolutely locked onto everything. We got overexcited. There were tools for everything. We were throwing everything out at the teachers saying, oh, you can use this, you can use that. And very quickly, we learned nobody was using AI because we'd completely overwhelmed ourselves. And I really, this sounds very silly. Now I'm very grateful that happened, because what it made me do was stop and actually take stock of what it is we were going to do in relation to this massive disruption. What were we going to do in order to take culturally everybody with us, instead of just getting very excited and then not having any stance in relation to it. And so in terms of what we did, the very first thing is I spent time thinking about what are our values going to be in relation to AI. That's absolutely where we started. And for me, I really felt quite strongly that if we only ever stayed in the policing mindset of AI, where you're talking about plagiarism, where you're talking about cheating, and you're talking about students having disciplinaries and students repeating work and all these things that everybody was talking about, then you are going to push it underground. Learners are not going to feel like that they can have a conversation with you because they will be fearful. And so that was my very opening standpoint, was that anything I decide to do here in the college, I want it to be about transparency, and I want it to be about bringing it to the forefront to have good conversation. And the other thing that occurred to me really, really early on, and I still stand by this, when lots of places were talking about, well, what consent are you getting from your learners when they come to you? And everyone's like, well, we're getting them to consent that they're going to use AI properly. I was like, well, don't we need to teach them about it first? You know, don't get them to consent to using AI properly if we haven't given them a learning journey. And AI is bigger than education, as we all know. And our role in the AI journey is the learning part. This is where they come and they can play and experiment, and they can get it wrong, and they can be challenged, and they can be supported. So these two values of wanting learners to have transparency, wanting them to be able to come here and safely make a mistake and then be supported to make a better decision, those two elements really underpinned that moving away from that very negative and very suffocating view around AI in those early days. And it was hard. It was really hard, because every time I was talking to people and networks, they wanted to know about my AI policy. They wanted to know what we were doing about malpractice. They wanted to know about all of those elements. So it was quite, I had to go a bit rogue. I tend to go a bit rogue. So I did in those early days. I'm good at going rogue. And I really think that helped us. So yeah, values, it was about having a moral compass in relation to AI and then taking the organization with us. It was about transparency and bringing that conversation to the forefront, and remembering that at that point in that early phase, this is the learning place. That's what we are. I hope that answers that.
100%, yeah. And I'm always wrestling with this. Whenever I work with leaders, I'm always trying to get the distinction right between policy and strategy. Mm-hmm. You know, they're two very different things. And yeah. I think policy, we need policy. Of course we need policy. We need those lines in the sand. Everyone needs to know where they stand, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. But we get stuck there if that's where we stay. And actually, for me, the strategy is about what's the vision here? Where do we want to be with this? How do we want to lead with this?
Exactly. And one of the things when we were thinking about that in the early days, the two biggest fears that people had in our organization is, one, it's going to replace learning, and two, it's going to replace jobs. So very quickly, I wanted to create a value-orientated statement that put, regardless of your interaction with AI and your understanding of it, that it made very clear where I stood as the leader on an AI, which was enhancement, not replacement. And to this day, that's still my benchmark. When I get new initiatives, new ideas, people in my inbox, I will assess them against that value point. Does it enhance what we're doing here, or is it looking to replace? And I think that's given the organization a little bit of confidence that I'm not going to bring something in that is about saving man hours, improving budget lines, and all these things. It is very much about enhancing what we do. And I think people have been very grateful. And just on policy, a lot of colleges shied away from writing policy in those early days. And I just went for it. I just gave it a go. And it's very funny. I'm on policy version 4 now. I redo them every year. I look back at 1, I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I read it and I'm just like, oh my gosh, thinking what I've got in version 4. But the learning of actually using a policy as opposed to a policing document, but actually as a document to help me understand what I want to do to inform strategy, it was really, really helpful.
Amazing. And speaking of vision, Amar, Grammarly have kind of been at the forefront of changing this narrative, haven't they? And kind of, as Bryony said, enhancing the learner experience, enhancing what learners can do with AI within the academic environment. And features like Grammarly Authorship allow a full replay of the student's actual writing journey. How does this transparency shift the educational paradigm away from just a hostile AI detection towards a more constructive conversation about authentic authorship?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So I think Bryony points they resonate, especially a lot of the conversations I'm having at the moment with institutions, and actually what's being reported out there as well. students, pretty much all students, and most students are using AI of some sort. I had a conversation with an institution a while ago, or not a while ago, a short while ago. He said, AI is coming everywhere. We've got students using AI on Instagram to answer questions. So how do we control that? How do we manage that? And so I think the big shift is that how do we stop students writing something and then having to investigate it after the fact, right? We need to treat it as more of a process that we understand and support. Because I remember my day when I was doing my thesis and so forth, it was a case of, you had a year to write this, and at the end you were worried that, actually, am I going to hand it and am I going to be caught for cheating? Even though I know I haven't, but I've used data, and back then it was, copy and pasting off Wikipedia mostly. Now the answers are given to you. But it's really understanding how is that process working for that individual, the student, but also the faculty member, because at the end of the day, if it goes through Aviva, it creates anxiety, it wastes time necessarily on both sides of this. There can be legal replications that happen. So really it's about how do we take a step backwards and say, well, actually, with the rise of AI, there are so many false positives out there in the market of that kind of traditional plagiarism detection. Okay, it's creating anxiety, it's not helping the student narrative necessarily. So how can we take a step back and say, how can we help the student actually work forward? And one of the things Grammarly and Superhuman did with authorship, which was, let's flip this. Let's not make it okay, you've done something, now let's check that you're not cheating, almost, proving that you're wrong to some degree. Let's actually help you along that journey, because if a faculty member can see how a student's progressing through a piece of work, whether they use AI or not doesn't matter anymore, because now the faculty member, the teacher can start understanding, how do they come to that conclusion? Can they come up with better? Do they understand what they're writing? They might have used some information out there. They might have used AI to generate it. Actually, do they understand what they're putting into their overall documentation? Do they understand where that came from? Have they checked it to be, is it factual or not? Some of those things are really at the forefront of what we're doing. And this is where it's less around, actually, is it AI plagiarism or is it generally plagiarism or not anymore? Because the lines are very blurred out there. I think it's more around, let us reframe this and help students have better outcomes. As Bryony said, it's not just around about, are people using AI and then using the guidelines, everything around it, but what are we trying to achieve? Because when people go into the workplace, they're going to be using AI. In fact, employers want you to be using AI. They want you to be AI first, automating processes, saving time, making you productive. So really that should start, from my point of view, that should start in the classroom. And this is where, if we actually think about authorship in this, Stan, that's where it starts really. Think about the most anxiety that's created through that learning process. It's around plagiarism detection. It's about making sure the work is unique, whether the student understands it, whether they're delivering something novel. Well, actually, this is where things like authorship, where we're no longer just detecting plagiarism, but taking that step back and saying, how can I help you through this journey? Hopefully that resonates a little bit.
I think that key word, transparency, is so important, isn't it? The fact that we know we're all using it. We're like, let's not pretend like something else is happening here. And I mean, there was a big report released at the end of last year that found that 86% of teenagers are using it for schoolwork. And I remember I think I was working with a school in New York City about a week after, and I remember presenting that stat to them. And they had just done their own research internally, and they're like, yeah, it's 100% for us. It's literally every student is using this. And I think that'll be the same story kind of no matter where we are. Actually, how do we just be transparent about that and go, right, we know you're going to jump into this tool, we're using it as well, but actually, how do we still go on a learning journey together with these tools in existence, with these tools at our fingertips? Bryony, are you finding the transparency that these tools offer, are they helping your faculty and your students?
Yeah.
Are they
I was just going to add to your previous point, if that's okay. I've got a lovely little tangible example of AI in action with learners. So we had our inspectorate in just before Christmas, and they wanted to meet groups of learners in order to discuss with them their feelings around AI. And so we had 2 groups of learners, not orchestrated in any way. It was who could make what time slot. And after they'd spoken to the learners, they had come to me and they said, "Oh," and I was like, "Okay, go on." Nervous when the inspectorate started making that noise. And they said, "Look, one group of learners really loves AI and the other one absolutely hated it." And I think they were expecting me to get worried about that and go, "Oh my gosh, I'll fix that second group and make sure they all love AI." I couldn't have been more proud, and I told them that actually. And I was so proud that actually, culturally, what we're trying to do here, and I think this feeds into exactly what I was saying about in terms of the learning process, is that those learners in the second group had made a decision about the relevancy of AI to their own learning. And they were from more creative subjects. And they had clearly processed that actually, for us, I don't want that to feature in the work that I'm doing. And those learners had made that decision, and not only made that decision, but articulated that to an inspectorate. And I genuinely couldn't have been more proud of them for that. And I hope, as long as, I'm leading that here for the college, that continues to be the way. And just to follow on, please pull me back if I'm going on a tangent. The other thing to follow on from that is that when we work with our learners on AI, and maybe we talk a bit about this a little bit later, we don't teach them a tool, we teach them a value. We teach them a set of ethics in terms of not AI ethics, but their ethics, in terms of where they can, we are a Google college, so Gemini is the tool that all of our learners have access to. But we don't specifically teach them Gemini, we teach AI through Gemini in the hope that whatever platform they go into, wherever they go in the workforce, is that actually they'll learn a set of principles and values around the notion of learning and their own their enjoyment of the thing that they do, and hopefully take that into whatever AI space they might end up in. I don't know if that answers your question, because I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, sorry.
No, it's good, and you shared some really good things there. For everyone else on the call, tell us your experience in the chat. Let us know, because you'll have experiences similar to these, different to these, and if you've got any questions, please do get them in there.
Dan, sorry, Dan, just to step in here very quickly. I think, Brian, what you said, it makes it so much more constructive in what we're trying to deliver generally. And I think it also gives staff a more confident basis for that conversation. So rather than accusing the student, actually they can sit down and say, talk me through your writing process or your creative process. I think, and for me, especially speaking to people I know who are in the education system at the moment, as in friends and family, it feels like it would be a lot more of a much more of a healthier kind of educational conversation that they're having. Because the confidence isn't going to grow an atmosphere of suspicion necessarily, which is what generally plagiarism detection and the lack of transparency has provided, especially when I was in it as well. So I think, when expectations are clear, like the guidelines you've created before, I know you're in your version 4, but this is evolving. And I think students, faculty members want to know what that's going to look. They understand it's going to change, but they want to understand, what support is available, how do I use AI responsibly, around kind of, and how do I get that feeling of I can use something without going, oh, is this wrong? Sorry, Dan.
No, it's good. And I kind of want to build on that a little bit, because I know a lot of people who are with us, and a lot of educators are worried about kind of where the line is, I guess. So we're talking really openly here about students use it. Let's be transparent about it. Let's actually let them, to a certain degree, use it. But I suppose when it comes to these tools, and especially because I suppose you're speaking from that perspective of Grammarly, how do you make sure that students are using these, like Bryony said, to enhance rather than doing the cognitive offload, which I think a lot of educators are really worried about. So how does a tool like Grammarly kind of stay on that line and help the students navigate that line in a way that protects their own thinking?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly, without getting into kind of product features and specifics here, that's exactly what the authorship element was created for. So the team are very passionate about education. Grammarly education is what it was built on. It was for students, and it's been built around that. And we're very much focused around how do we enhance that student experience. And part of that is why we created authorship in the first place. It was kind of flipping that narrative to take away that what's wrong with plagiarism, what's wrong with that detection process for the moment, how do we help it? And when you ask students, it's a case of, well, once again, as I said before, I don't want to spend all my time doing something at the end hoping I'm going to pass or hoping I'm not going to be flagged for something. And this is where the likes of authorship allows the teacher, the faculty member to do that record, that playback and see that journey. Now, there might be questions that arise, but at least now they can have that healthy conversation, which I spoke about earlier, and ask the right type of questions instead of prove to me why I'm wrong on stating that you've plagiarized here. Prove to me that you've done a good job. Actually, you're flipping it going, well, actually, if I can see what you've done, maybe I can enhance you. Maybe I can take you through that process. Maybe I can even help you improve your score because now I'm sitting with you through that writing journey or creative process. I think at the end of the day, people, maybe I'm a little bit naive, but you go to university, you go to any kind of education institution, and in a case of, I want to get through a process to get through with the best grades possible, with the best outcomes possible, and ultimately, I get a job that allows me to use my skill and enhance that going forward.
Yeah, Bryony, do you want to jump in?
I do. Sorry, I think it's absolutely spot on what you've just said, and I've got actually a nice little link to something that happened with us in the early days. And I love with Grammarly in terms of it giving that process to have a good conversation with the learner, and I think that's really important because you're right. Otherwise, the default is that I think this is ChatGPT. Show me it's not. Where does someone go from that? That's so demoralizing. And the little anecdote that I like to share around this is that we had a situation where a member of staff did accuse a learner of cheating using AI. And it got really nasty. And actually, the reason why I use this as an example is because once we actually dug down into the bottom of it, we don't feel the learner had. And when I then spoke to the member of staff and said, so are you using ChatGPT? Are you familiar with how it all works? And like, no, I don't touch AI. So they'd actually made a decision on the learner's work based on assumption and fear of what they thought AI can and can't do. And I think tools where it helps those staff in particular, as an example, to take a step back, to slow down, not to jump into terminology that terrifies, and go through a process and talk to a learner. I mean, if I'm honest, my feeling is that AI is the best thing that ever happened to assessment because we got to sort it out. We've got to change it. We've got to think about knowing our learners better. We've got to think more about what is it we're actually assessing. I think we've got so outcomes and product focused that we've forgotten what we're assessing. And when you know what you're assessing, then you know whether AI can feature or not. And until you know what you're assessing, you can't make that decision, and that's when you get into that fear zone. So I just wanted to echo that I think that tool element is really important.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of research recently around the use of AI in education. We've waited a few years for this to come out, and one of the things that really strikes me is who the AI is helping, and it kind of gets to the equity question, I guess, in that is this technology going to help a student who knows a lot about AI already, and what about the students who don't? And the other day I was talking to one of the research directors at DeepMind, who had just released a report on how their AI tutors are helping people, and a study from Sierra Leone, and it found that the students who actually were already ahead used the AI more and were able to achieve more with the AI. And that kind of worried me a little bit because of I suppose the potential of this technology to really widen that equity gap. When, and we're hearing governments and the government here in the UK talking a lot at the minute about introducing AI to close that gap. But actually some of the evidence is suggesting maybe that won't happen. So I suppose my question is for you, Ahmad. So when we look at this, how is Grammarly and anybody using those tools helping more marginalized students, maybe more neurodivergent students, or students who have English as an additional language, and kind of bridge that equity gap?
Yeah, I think so. Grammarly became Superhuman for kind of a reason, and it was actually, the idea is to make every person a superhuman, effectively in their work, in their education. And that's, for me, I believe it's not thinking about AI. AI is another tool, it's another technology, effectively. The average person shouldn't really have to care about AI. You shouldn't have to be a prompt genius to work out what you're doing. I want an AI that's going to help me along the way, be my assistant, automatically integrate into everything. So from an equity point of view, I think as we add more of these technologies and they just become our way of life effectively, that will automatically even that playing field. Because if you look at some of the work we're doing with our integration plays and so forth, we're integrating with the likes of Speechify and technologies that, if we take neurodiversity, they're using. So now not only have I have to worry about multiple different applications that I'm connecting with, I've got a single platform, an assistant that's effectively doing that work for me, reducing my need to have to work out what to do when I'm doing it. If I go into a lecture, have I got everything running? Do I need to set it up before? Does my institution approve it or not? That can already be there and something that's controlled and governed by the institution, but allows me to not have to worry about what I'm using, how I'm using it, is it connected? Am I going to have the tools I need? And the AI is just there as and when I need it. So, if I have difficulties in aspects of learning, for example, maybe I can't hear or follow something the way I need to, and I need to take that, and I learn differently. So I take those notes and I think about them later and I replay. Imagine just being able to take the transcript, take it back, and actually have AI understand how I learn and feed that information back to me with the notes and everything that I need. Is it taking away my learning capability? No, it's making it easier for me to absorb that information. Sorry, Bryony's raised her hand there.
Sorry, I'm getting overexcited on this topic. I completely concur. I think it's actually looking at the potential of AI to make learning bespoke. And I wanted to give you a little example. I've actually been running a training session this afternoon, and it's not rocket science, it's really simple, but sometimes you don't quite always think about it. But I'm very happy to share, my son doesn't mind. He's got ADHD, he's 11, and he's been really struggling with fractions, absolute nightmare struggling with fractions. And the school send home more and more worksheets. Fab, brilliant, pages and pages of fractions. I numerically challenged myself, so not always the best to help him. So I built him a GPT, and he, with his neurodiversity, he is wildly obsessed with Jurassic Park to a level where I'm pretty sure he knows more about Jurassic Park than the makers of Jurassic Park. So I built him a GPT utilising adventures with Alan Grant from Jurassic Park, and it would go on these journeys. And I built into it about the tone and sort of personality I wanted of it, and how I wanted it to support his type of particular learning need, which was nice, clear, slow instruction, bite-sized, scaffolded learning. And I built into it that it would provide me with feedback at the end, so that once we got to the end of any 10 sets of questions, then it would tell me in a non-numerically challenged way how he'd done. And I think what was quite exciting about this is I actually had to say to him one night, Ben, can you stop revising and go to bed, please? Which I'd never uttered to my child in his whole time of being in school. But the other thing is he asked for extended writing, which, as you can maybe imagine, his particular neurodiversity, that is not his interest. And he wanted that. He wanted extension writing. So we changed the GPT in order for it to adjust to what he wanted. But on top of that, the test that he'd taken fractions prior, he had got 62%. And I know that the GPT is not the exclusive reason for the improvement, but he got 94% on his test that he took after. And I think that was down to the AI found a place in his learning world where it could help him and it could make a difference to him. And my vision, one of the things I'm working on here is that I don't want necessarily us to be making bots for learners. I mean, I did that for Ben. I want students to make their own. I want them to be able to go, do you know what? I'm really struggling with this. I'm really interested in this. I'm going to put the two together and see if that helps. So I think, there are concerns, I suppose, around that equity and inclusivity, but I really believe as long as we don't try and blanket AI and really think about, because it is a bespoke tool, that's what it can do. I think the opportunities are endless, really.
Yeah, and I think, Bryony, you've got it's a really good example, and it's one that sorry, I've got my hand raised still. It was one that I was thinking about a while ago. So Dan, with Superhuman, we've got Grammarly, we have authorship, and we have some great features, benefits, functions within there. But if you take Superhuman as a whole for education, that's exactly what it is. Now imagine, a student not having to think about creating their own agent and the system working that out for you, or the ability to go, okay, I want to create my agent and I can write what I want and it creates it. So I'm not thinking about AI, I'm not thinking about the technology, I'm just requesting and it's building all of that in the background, but with the guardrails that the institution has put in place. So are they using their own LMM model, for example, instead of one of the big open source ones and bringing that in? Where does the data go? Are the applications and the agents that are connected, are they approved? And all of that kind of governance and control, which is really important. But ultimately, the student should be able to use AI, use technology to enhance their learning, but also the faculty member. So imagine, I spoke to a faculty member the other day about what are they doing day to day and how do they work in advance? And it was, well, I have to create these quizzes, I create the lecture notes, the quizzes, the presentations, everything. Okay, so AI can help you with the presentations, everything. I said, imagine if you could actually be a lot more productive, a lot more interactive. So your quizzes you're creating are actually created on demand, on the fly, based on the conversation that's happening in the classroom, because you go into a classroom creating a quiz assuming that the students know X, but imagine from that conversation, they know more, and maybe they're not so confident in certain areas, so you can create new tests and quizzes automatically. Not only does that save you time, but you're enhancing their learning through that journey interactively. And I think if I was a student, I think that's what I would want as well, as in more interactive learning that's more tailored and feels like it's tailored to me. But from an educational point of view and a faculty member, you don't want to be putting lots of things on their plate because they're going to be time restricted anyway. So how can you improve their time management, help them through that process as well, and have outcomes for both?
Yeah, I love that. That it almost feels like that's how it should be. That it's there, and I often come back to that, and it's a bit of a cliche now, but that kind of metaphor that AI is more like electricity rather than a specific technology product. And nobody gets up in the morning and thinks, what am I going to use electricity for today? What shall I use? Well, let's wedge it into everything I do today. It's just not how we work. You've probably used electricity 50 times before you've left the house in the morning, and nobody's even thinking about the electricity. It's there. It works when it needs to work. When you don't need it, it's not there, but you're not actively going, how do I integrate electricity? And I think we're quickly, with platforms like Superhuman, we're moving quickly into that realm of, well, it's just there powering kind of what we need. And I think the faster we get to that point, the better, really. And we kind of move past this early, almost feels like clunky stage of AI, of using, just thinking of AI as a chatbot almost. can I jump back into assessment, because I'm obsessed with this topic, and I think, Bryony, you said something earlier about how AI is a good thing because it's going to help us to rethink the whole assessment question, and I agree with you, and I sometimes come back to something I call the 3 Ps, and that is, how do we look at what students, the process that they're going through, the product, and the performance, essentially how they're going to use it, how they're going to take this into the world, and how we've focused mainly on the product of the learning. Are we starting to see more of a focus now, and more of an emergent importance on that process, on the performance? And I suppose, from the classroom, have you got any examples you can share with us about?
Of course I have.
That's why you're here. Amazing.
Yeah, right. So we do have to address the elephant in the room before we can start talking about assessment, which is the fact that there is a disconnect between the realities of the classroom and the exam board infrastructure. And that's been very challenging in terms of, I fully appreciate that the speeds that those two infrastructures work at are different. We are working with learners that are bringing AI into the space, on Monday, and we've got to figure it out by Tuesday, this kind of thing. And exam boards are working with something that takes longer to shift and to change. And I've had some really exciting conversations with different exam boards, spent some time with Pearson in London, fantastic conversations about what can we do. But what I ended up doing was looking at, ultimately we are structured and at a point where those exam boards are going to be the end point for us, because that's what we're working to. So what can we do locally in order to improve that process? So for us, and I'm sure this is a name everybody is familiar with, is Leon Furs. I used to run an AI network, and he came and talked in that network right in the early days. And there was a generosity of spirit with his approach to work, which I really loved, around his AI assessment scale. And one of the things I liked about it was that he gave it over and said, do with it as you will, which was really lovely. And so that's what we adopted very early on, but we adopted it into a process of learning for learners. And we are not, when it comes to assessment, pro more AI or pro less. We are pro transparency. That's what we're pro, is that we want staff to think about, as I said earlier, what am I assessing? And will the AI use potentially get in the way of the thing that I'm actually trying to assess? I mean, if you think of some assessments and all the steps you make learners go, and then you mark at the end and you think, gosh, I haven't even really looked at that bit of work that they did there. I haven't used that in my marking criteria at all. I haven't assessed in that. So I think the assessment scale has been big for us. And I did see the comment earlier about, teachers do know their learners, and you're right, they do, but not everybody, sadly. And I echo Jamie's point, where he says you do see where people don't know their learner, and they don't know how they work, and they don't know how they think. And assessment needs to move into that space. You're talking about Viva earlier, Amar, and one of the things, I look after the higher education provision here in the college as well, and one of the things that I'd like to see in revalidated programs is a reduction in 100% assessment, where it's all sort of written, so that it can come down, and that actually a Viva becomes a very positive experience that is about conversation. So instead of 100% on a piece of written work, that might be 80%, might be 70%, and the rest is a Viva, which is a very good, lovely conversation where someone gets to talk about their learning and talk about their process. And that is something I'm really advocating here in our college to change with the university.
Amazing, thank you. Amar, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think, like I said, Ron, I think there is a major shift. So, historically, we've often treated things as like the final essay, the report, the assignment as the main evidence of learning. But if AI can now generate that kind of reasonable first draft, and they can do it very, very quickly, is that cheating? Then, that means that final artifact is no longer enough to assess on. We probably need to look much more closely at the process behind how that's been created. I think that's where that major shift's going to be, instead of, I guess, less from when I did it, which was create that document, do the literature. I could do a literature review now within 30 minutes, where before it would take me 6 months or something. So now it's less about that kind of first draft and kind of that artifact, more around what's that process behind it. But that doesn't mean that the writing is less important for me. I think the writing becomes more important because the student's role shifts from simply producing text, producing that creative element of it, to evaluating, refining, defining, being critical about their own work, so they have a better understanding of how something's been produced. I don't know what you think about that, Bryony, but that was my take on it, from the shift of when I was in it to what's happening now.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes back to that, giving that learner that space to own that process, and to talk about it and to make decisions about their own learning within the context. I suppose going back to those two groups of learners that I referenced earlier, the ones that were like, yeah, this, I love it, and the ones that actually, no, this is not going to feature as part of my learning process. Yeah, completely agree.
Amazing. Amar, is that something that students can do in Grammarly? Can they, do you get the insights there as an educator to be able to see how they're interrogating maybe what an AI has come out with?
Yeah, so with the authorship as an example, it can connect to LMS models and so forth as well. You can track the student's process, you can replay. It will give the faculty member an indication of how much of it is AI generated versus human and unique work. Actually, the important bit is play back through it. It's almost like I've been sitting with you side by side along that process, that tailored view of education. Everyone wants that one-to-one education, that private tutoring, I guess. Now it's almost giving you that, because they can play back through it and ask you questions around, okay, so I see you did this, how did you get to it? Have you thought about this? What questions have you asked yourself? And going through that coach, and yeah, Jamie, you've got AI as a coach, but actually enabling the faculty member to actually be the coach, because now they've got time and the ability, the tools to do that.
That's brilliant. Let's move into, I suppose, the pedagogical side, and students moving from task executors to more orchestrators who design how work gets done alongside AI. Bryony, your curriculum models at Coleg Sergar focus heavily on transforming students into those creative orchestrators. What does a highly literate student look like in this environment, and how do we teach them to maintain their unique human voice and identify where they're using AI?
Yeah, I think this is a fab question, and I don't think my answer is going to be the one you would expect necessarily. I think in response to that, you would be maybe people would assume some kind of digital literacy response, but actually a really good learner in this space is someone that knows that they can challenge it and that they can ask questions. That, for me, that's what I want for all of our learners. So in order to facilitate that, our learners undergo 2 pieces of professional learning in this space. So we design all our own learning packages in-house. And so all new learners that join us undertake a program called Think Smart, Learn Smart. And that is a program that is designed as an e-learning package, which essentially, based on the differentiated needs of learners across the institution. Some might do it asynchronously, and some might do it under tutorship and guardianship, and some might do it a little bit at a time throughout the year. Some might do it in one long go. And that program is about the transparency, it's about having the conversation, it's about alternative styles of learning. So when we look at the levels of the assessment scale, we won't ever just determine what the AI can do. We'll talk about other pedagogical approaches of how you can do that task. So it's keeping that mind open. And then all returning learners and second year learners, they undertake a program which is called AI on Trial, Guilty Until Proven Useful. And essentially that program is all designed around critical thinking. And I was very chuffed with the title. Thank you, Jamie, for the laugh. It's designed to get them thinking about what they see in front of them, and to, so we look at media, we look at sustainability, we look at all of those more complex topics around AI, so that they're not just thinking about AI specifically in relation to a piece of work and a piece of assessment, but they're thinking about it more holistically as a citizen of a AI enhanced world. And I think what has been really good with that is that learners don't have to say good stuff about things. You know, if they don't like something, they'll just tell you they don't like it. But actually the data we've had back and the feedback from learners on those programs has been amazing. And I think they really appreciate somebody that's confident in this space, or can gain confidence in this space, is somebody that knows that they've got a way to talk about it and the way to try and explore it and to think about it. You know, for me, it's so much more than the tech. It's so much more than that. And it always is. It's about the person at the center of it and the space for them to figure out what their moral compass aligns to. I don't know if that answers the question again, actually.
I think it does, because I mean, we're talking about how does the student maintain their own voice within this as well, and not just, I suppose, just going, right, well, the AI said that, I'll use that. But and I think sometimes when we use those arguments, we don't give students enough credit for actually being their own people. Anyone who's spent any amount of time around teenagers will know that that's not how teenagers react. That's not how they function. Like, they're very keen to use their own voice and to want their own voice to be heard. And I think how do we empower them to, and I think that word has come through like a real golden thread throughout this conversation. How do we empower them to be able to use this to amplify their own voice? I think is so important, especially, and Amar, you said earlier about, actually, they're going to be required to use this when they go in the workplace, when they leave us and they're in that workplace. And an employer isn't going to want someone who just regurgitates ChatGPT. I mean, just buy a ChatGPT license. They don't have to employ someone then, but they want somebody who brings along the ability to have judgment and synthesis of what an AI can do and say, but then through the lens of a real human being. Like someone said to me recently, it doesn't matter how advanced AI gets, when you make a deal or you do a bit of business or you close a sale, whatever it might be in the world of industry, people are always going to want to do it with another human being. They're going to want to ask about your family. They're going to want to know who you are as a person. And I think supporting what Brian has been saying about the enhancement there, and what you're saying about these skills helping in the workplace, is, I suppose, coming back, and I know I keep bringing everything back with yourself to Superhuman and what you guys are doing, but because I feel like you guys are kind of on the pulse here with this, and then is this a tool that can follow a student and help them build those skills as they transition into the workplace?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think, so in the workplace, people are not just writing one essay, one assignment. They're managing a constant flow of communication, whether it's emails, chats, documents, and I don't have to go, we're all getting those in the workplace, and I get far too many of them. So communication is no longer about just writing skill anymore. It's about the workflow skill, and it's not just using AI and tools to go, can I do an assessment or an assignment? It's how am I using the plethora of amazing applications and tools and information out there to enhance that workflow skill. And if we going back to Superhuman itself, integration with multiple systems, taking away the need to worry about what's the vendor for an application. It shouldn't matter anymore. It's about data, it's about usage, it's about understanding how can I improve a process. So if I went into, when I had my own business, I had people coming in from highly technical degrees saying, by the way, great, I've been here for 2 weeks now, but actually you're not doing this very well. Great, so how do we improve it? And then it was a process improvement. Now we've got this idea of we can use AI to automate that bit and this bit and this bit, and this is what the outcomes are. And it takes me back to a conversation I had the other day, which was, we looked at the word processor when it first came out. People were very used to writing on a typewriter and they liked it. People, we're never going to use a word processor. This is what we do. But actually, you look at what a word processor actually did. It didn't just produce the document and the word. It allowed me to send it instantly to someone. It allowed me to print multiple copies of it. It saved me time and enhanced my communication. Effectively, the workflow of documentation and creation. And that's what I believe AI, like Superhuman, can actually do for any part of a workflow. It's just ensuring that we're giving the skills and the ability and the tools to our students now so they can take those, just like the word processing, into the workforce and come up with those new creative ideas on how can we use technology better to improve what you're doing. Allowing that student to shine and go, straight to the office of a CEO with, I've just improved something and I think it's going to save productivity, money, whatever it's going to be. This is what it's going to do for you.
Bryony, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just to echo workflows, absolutely a nail on the head. That is the mindset to come at this with. And I'm delivering some of our quals that we've written for the NHS at the minute. And those are the exact conversations that we're having with different teams in administration roles within our local health board. And it's fascinating because actually I think what can happen sometimes is that people will think of a workflow as an entirety and think, I want AI to do this task. And if there's a bit of it where it might not work, then they rule out that complete task and it goes out the window and then it's forgotten. And what I've been talking to them about is you need to see it as that 100% and then decide, well, actually, is the AI going to help me with 20% and leave me with 80% where that needs to be me? I'm the active participant. I'm the human voice in that particular workflow. And I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. So they were coming up with tasks that originally they wouldn't have considered, whether there's potentially an ethical issue or as a GDPR, well, then you protect that in a workflow and you look around that where the AI might sit. So I think we've got a job in education. Perhaps already my brain's going 1,000 miles per hour of what we can start to do is to look at how do we teach learners to move from the notion of a process in an assessment capacity into actually a wider workflow in the workplace. I think that would be very interesting.
Amazing. Amar, we're going to come to you and then we're going to go to questions. So if you haven't got your question in and you want to ask a question, get it in right now, because as soon as Amar stops talking, we're going to go straight to them. Go on, Amar.
I could be. Okay, so just to wrap that up, I just think, based on what you're saying, Brian, I think for students, the goal is not to become dependent on AI, and I don't think that's the goal for any of us, but the goal is to really learn how to direct AI. And I think this is what will make them really effective in the workplace. So it's not just, I'm dependent on AI, I use this is how I use it. How do I use it better, more efficiently? How do I direct it and the goals that I'm trying to achieve in my day-to-day life, but also the strategy for the business or whatever that might be.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to invite Alexandra back in now. Alexandra, are there any pressing questions that we should get to grips with?
I first would like to say I feel the audience would agree with me when I feel like I could listen to you three for hours, because that was all brilliant. So we have had a range of questions come through, some of which you guys have already touched on. So I'm going to try and focus on some of the questions that maybe haven't been answered so much. So for our first question, how might institutions ensure AI become an equalising force and avoid any accidental widening of gaps in participation?
You don't start with the tech, you start with the culture. I just don't see any other answer to that in terms of how you ensure that everybody has that opportunity to engage. If you start with the tech, you will leave people behind. You will have people without opportunities. And I think if you can take that time, as I said at the beginning, to think about the values of as an institution and where you stand and what you want, and you've got to take everybody with you. The reason I did the enhancement, not replacement in our SLT, we've got people that are really into it and we've got people who aren't, but everybody can say enhancement, not replacement. Everyone can stand behind that as a notion and can use that as an assessment tool of where we're at as an institution around AI. So it's got to be culture. It's got to be culture. If you do tech first, you will leave people behind.
Brilliant, thank you. Amar, would you like to come in on that?
Yeah, I think, that's exactly the point. I think it's making sure that AI isn't the reason why you're doing something. It's how do I do, because with a lot of AI or any AI, whether you're creating your own custom workflows internally, whether they're models, whatever it might be, or any application, every time you create something that you think is going to be a ha-ha moment, you've got to remember you are then having to train an entire team, maybe thousands of students, faculty members across the board on how to use that, how to deliver it. And it's constantly changing. So I think it's more taking a step back going, what are we actually trying to achieve? How do we make it as frictionless as possible? And are we really adding the value to someone's day-to-day experience, or are we removing it by adding more operational issues? I think that's the question that people are still trying to balance. And how do you do that? How do I integrate and use AI or deliver AI without everyone having to think about AI, right? So it's just there, it just works, and it just gives them the information, the ability to work day to day.
I keep coming back to it at the minute because it's the largest study that's happened, is the Microsoft Work Trend Index from a few months ago, and they found that when an organization just leaves it down to its enthusiastic people, the impact is about 32%. When it's a systemic change, it goes up to 67%, and I think it kind of echoes what Bryony and Amara said, that it's the system around our people that helps us to move us forward, and that essentially is a leadership effort. It has to be leadership first. Thank you, Alexandra. Any more questions?
So based on around culture as well, we have another question where, should we embrace dissent among staff regarding AI implementation?
I love that question. I love all these questions. They're brilliant. I don't see it as dissent. I see it as somebody's moral compass. That's all we're talking about here. It's a bit like saying plagiarism and you're putting people in boxes of opinions towards something. One thing that I do say to our organisation and everybody within it, regardless of where AI may or may not feature in your day-to-day teaching practice, as educators of the next generation, you are obligated to engage with AI as a concept and to understand where it might appear in your classroom. Even if you're not one of those that are actively, engaging with it, you are obligated. Digital skill for too many years has been a bolt-on. It's been your main core skills and digital, and I feel really passionately about that here. So our enhancement not replacement program is undertaken by everybody, regardless of what happens in their own classroom, regardless of what they personally believe. We are doing our learners a disservice as educators if we don't have an awareness of AI. And I come back to that story of the learner that was accused of plagiarizing by a staff member that had never used ChatGPT, had never used AI. That's wrong. That's wrong, and that's when you start messing around with people's learning journeys. So I feel I love people to challenge me here in the college and anywhere else. I love to be challenged, I love to be kept on my toes. I love people to tell me all the reasons why it's amazing and all the reasons why it's awful and all the things in between. I want people to have their own opinion, and I come back to those students again. I couldn't be more proud of students telling an inspector they don't like it. I think that's wonderful, but we are educators. That's our part in this journey. So we have to educate on this topic. So I hope that answers that.
Fantastic. I think we're going to leave it there. I think we've ended it in a perfect place there. Bryony, thank you so much for sharing your practical wisdom with us. And it's amazing to see the work that you've been doing over the last few years. And I couldn't have thought of a better practitioner to join us today. So thank you so much.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Amar, amazing to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time and to hear about how you're supporting the education community through Superhuman and the work that Grammarly is doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dan, and lovely to meet you, Bryony, and everyone else.
Thank you. And thanks to the guys at Sea Learning for putting this on. Amazing event. And thank you for all your hard work. And we'll see everyone soon.